Perfect. So fast forward 2 years, our district is moving to Scholastic literacy next year. It's been a process that, again, that was a little over 2 years in the making. And I visited each of the building's PTA meetings and HSAs over the past few months. And we did a presentation at a board meeting a few months ago. This was not our plan. Our plan was to implement Scholastic literacy next year in September. But with the COVID-19 in front of us and us needing to help our children not being in the classroom and utilize technology, we worked with Scholastic and were able to bring Scholastic First, Word, and Literacy Pro to the district sooner. So over the past few weeks, we've been training our teachers. We've been working with our tech department, and we've been really pushing out some technology platforms, tools, digital tools to be able to support our kids at the elementary school level. Sorry, I keep clicking and admitting people that are just arriving. So welcome if you're just joining us. So we're really excited to be able to utilize some of the digital tools from Scholastic. We've been working really hard behind the scenes, and our teachers are learning as well. But we felt like these tools were the best tools that we could support our students with right now. So we're going to jump into, I'm going to introduce one of our technology coaches to you. He's going to talk a little bit about accessing the programs on devices. And then we're going to do a quick overview of each of the products, Scholastic First, Word, and Literacy Pro. And then we're going to go into addressing some of the questions that you sent in. And then we're also going to save some time for some live question and answer together. We want to make sure that we get your questions answered and that you could support and encourage your students, your children at home. Again, this is a difficult time for all of us, and we're here to support you, and hopefully you find this evening to be useful. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you Phil Jaros, who's one of our tech coaches. Judy Anthony is another tech coach in our district. I think Phil's going to start, and he's going to talk a little bit about accessing some of the digital programs that we're talking about this evening. So good evening, Phil.
Good evening. Welcome, everybody. Good to be here with everyone. I'm just going to present my screen here. Give it a second there. Okay, great. I just want to point out before I go any further that all of the information that we're talking about today is available on the district website under COVID-19 information. If you go to home learning information, this got a little facelift recently, thanks to Patrick Finelli. And all of the information that you're going to hear about tonight about accessing resources on your students' devices, whether it be your own or whether you borrowed a district device during this time, are available in a couple places. First of all, under home learning information, they're available under helpful resources, and we've organized them by device and also in general about logging into Clever. And also all the Scholastic resources, including some PDFs and some videos, are right here for you to click. You can also access that same information once you click on the Scholastic link. You'll see that there's also a link here on this page to that helpful resources page. So if you are confused or you need to go back and recheck some of the things that we talk about tonight, that's where you can find that on our COVID-19 informational site. I'm going to start by looking at an iPad. So in just a moment here, you should see my iPad screen right there on my desktop. We use a program called Clever for students of all grade levels to easily access resources that the district subscribes to. So if you are using a personal device, there are 2 apps that you need to download from the App Store on your in your Apple device. One of them is Clever right here in blue, and the other one is First, Scholastic First. It looks something like that. So you need to download both of those apps to have Scholastic work on your home device. If you borrowed a device from us, like this device is right here, then Clever and First will already be on there. To get into the Clever portal, you click on Clever, and depending on the grade level of your student, if they are kindergarten or first grader, then they have a little badge that looks like this that logs them into the Clever system. If not, then they should have their username and password for their Google account, and that's how they get in here. And from the Clever portal, you scroll down, you will notice that you see the Scholastic app right there. If you click on the Scholastic app, your child will have access to all of the Scholastic resources that they need. Scholastic Literacy Pro and Scholastic Word launch right from within the browser. Scholastic First will launch an additional app outside. So you'll notice it'll say to launch Ooka Island. You'll click launch and it will actually open up the Ooka Island app for you to use. The same procedure basically works when you are using this device on your home device. If you're using this, on a laptop, you have the same process here that you would anywhere else. You get the same basic idea. You log on to the website for Clever, and then you access the Scholastic resources there. Any questions on any of that?
So we have a chat feature. If you're new to Google Meets, there's a chat feature. I'm going to enable it.
Sorry, Mike, I lost you. Oh, there you are. Sorry about that.
Perfect. All right. Phil, a question came in. Are we able to save websites to the school iPads?
Good question. You should be able to use the browser in, use the Safari browser the same way you would in any other device. You should be able to save things there.
The next question that came in, is it normal to have a login into Clever between every assignment?
So Clever should be remembering the student's username and login for a period of time. If you are using a home device or students are sharing the device between multiple people, then you will notice that they will have to log in periodically. A good tip to follow, which in speaking to Clever recently about that very issue, I discovered that if you have already logged your student into Clever, when you click into an app to use it, use the back button in Safari to go back to the Clever main page, and then you won't have to re-log into Clever every time. It'll remember it. Part of the issue is that people are closing the Safari browser in between switching between apps. So that's one possible solution.
Mike, can I jump in?
The back button.
Mike?
Sure, go ahead, Judy.
We're finding also that logging in with the badges, the kids need to log in more often. And that's something that has to do with Clever. So if they want to log in using their email address and password, they may stay logged in longer.
All right, if we have any other login questions, we could take them now, or Phil and Judy will both be on the line during the call. So if you have any questions, if you just want to put it in the chat, and we will try to answer your question for you. All right, we're going to move to Ron Smith, who is on the back end of Scholastic's tech team. So Ron, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. All righty. Hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. My name is Ron Smith, and I am the Digital Success Manager. I work closely with our custom support team and our product support teams, as well as our product development teams, to ensure that your students' technical experience with our programs is a success. So to that end, we have heard from many of you that that your students have had some recent challenges with using our Scholastic Word program. Please know that we are aware of these issues, and as of tonight, we are releasing an update to address these issues. Some of the issues that we've heard about were instances where the program would crash during activities, requiring some students to refresh the page to continue. Other instances where the programs would freeze and not allow students to advance in an activity, as well as some of the poor sound quality issues that we've seen. All of these issues are being addressed with an update that we're sending out tonight. So our hope is that tomorrow, the students that have been experiencing these issues will have a better experience with the program. Please, if you could just, let us know through your normal channels, reaching out to your teachers as you have been in the past. At the same time that we're addressing these issues tonight, we're continuing to work through any outstanding issues or any potential new issues that may arise. So as updates are needed, we're able to do that pretty quickly. So in the meantime, again, reach out to your district contacts so that they can let us know in terms of, what you guys are experiencing so that we can address those issues.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Mike.
We're going to address the question that just came in about Scholastic Voices are sounding like a robot. We'll address that during when we go live into the actual apps, if that's okay. That's a new one I have not heard. So I'm going to introduce to you Eleanor. Eleanor is one of our trainers from Scholastic. She has been working side by side with us. She's been in our district as we've had some teachers that have been piloting the program over the past year. Again, the digital components are a small piece of Scholastic literacy. If this were during the normal school year and we were to wait until September, students would be accessing some of these digital tools while the teacher is working with a small guided reading group. So again, these are just some of the digital components that we will be using moving forward, but we felt like it was important enough to make sure our students had access to them now during this home learning phase. So Eleanor, welcome back. We had 4 sessions earlier today with our teachers. I'm glad you were able to join us. I know you're going to give a brief overview of each of the tools that we're talking about, and then we're going to dive into the platforms to address some of the questions. So welcome. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be with you. I'm looking forward to being with you in real life sooner, hopefully, than later. And I'm glad that we have this opportunity to share with families. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to jump in and talk a little bit more about the programs. So if you'll just bear with me for a second, making sure that you can see. So hopefully that's going to work. All right. So we already kind of went through the first hurdle. A lot of questions that we received before our session tonight were about login and access. So now that we know where to go on the district website to get more support there. When your students log in through Clever, they'll go to the Scholastic icon, and that's where they'll be able to see the 3 programs, Literacy Pro, First, and Word. They may be able to see all 3. They may be able to see 2. Some of that may be dependent on the teacher assignment for the different programs. So just a little quick overview about the programs. So first is a program that's going to help build some of their foundational reading skills. That's designed for our foundation is for students to engage in those programs 20 minutes a day, one or the other. And then Literacy Pro, as you'll see in just a few minutes, is our solution for independent reading to provide some additional resources beyond just the text that you may have at home. So we'll take just a minute to go into a short video, little overview on First. We're going to start there.
Learning to read begins with a single sound, a vital first step, because when you learn to read the way you learn to speak, reading feels natural. And when students learn to hear, identify, and manipulate sounds automatically, their brain energy focuses on comprehension. So reading becomes effortless. This is why Scholastic is proud to bring you Scholastic First, Foundations in Reading, Sounds, and Text, an innovative new approach to teaching reading. On Uka Island, we invite all students to embark on their own personal reading adventure, where every child is a hero. The path to fluent reading includes 6,695 microactions, enabling students to develop proficiency with the 5 foundational reading skills. As each child progresses on their reading journey, they move through 24 levels of instruction at their pace, with active personalization, which means students receive immediate scaffolding based on their specific interaction with Scholastic First, and their responses in one activity can create a new path. Designed to reinforce effective skill development. With Scholastic First, we are continuously measuring student progress through adaptive, game-based activities that capture and engage student interests, all the while providing a clear indication of where each student is on their path to fluent reading. Drawing on over 25 years of scientifically proven teaching methods, including the latest in adaptive learning, and with children in over 36 countries having already started their reading journey with an Island adventure.
You seem to be cutting in and out. Is she difficult to hear for anyone else?
Performance in Scholastic is available on any device. They can access it anytime, anywhere.
Definitely their comprehension is improving through the stories and the questions that they need to ask through those stories. I find it very useful in the fact that the children are engaged in something that's meaningful and educational, while I can take small groups and work on guided reading or letter sounds.
We invite you to take a trip to Uka Island, Scholastic's new digital foundational reading program for students in grades pre-K through 2, where all children can discover the joy of learning to read.
All right, so there you could see, as we jump back into our presentation, hopefully a little bit of information that is more about FIRST and what your students are going to be able to do. So the 5 foundational reading skills that Uka Island or FIRST are going to engage your students on are pictured here, rooted in phonemic awareness and phonics. Students are also, let me go back, students are also going to engage in vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension activities as they go on their adventures in Uka Island. So as students engage in those activities, there are going to be 24 levels of phonological instruction and 85 ebooks that they're going to have opportunities to read. But all the while, this program is adaptive. So depending on your students' needs and progression, they'll either receive additional support or have opportunities to advance to levels that are more appropriate for them. Typically, as students are going through, we like to think about it in 2 phases. They'll engage first in phonological activities, and I'll show you a little list of what some of those might be. And typically that time takes about 20 minutes. So by the time they come back to the next session, they'll engage in the reading comprehension and then have some time for free choice. Now, anytime a student stops an activity, they'll be able to pick right up where they last left off. The only thing is, if they leave in the middle of free choice, they won't get extra time in free choice. So here's some examples of those phonological activities and skills that students are going to be building. These are the learning targets that the games are going to have students work through, as well as the comprehension pieces. So we also have the a little more information, as I said, the adaptive path to fluent reading here. So there are many steps to the trajectory of developing reading skills, especially at those kindergarten or first grade levels. But the adaptive technology makes it seamless and provides a personalized learning path for your children. So I understand that we may have had some audio difficulties on our last video. So we're going to just skip over the video piece for Word, but we're going to go on and talk about Word next. So Word is a second program typically designed for our students who are learning at home in second, third, and fourth grade. Though if you have kindergarten or first grade students, you may have teachers advising them to try those activities as well. This program stands for Words Open Reading Doors. A little bit about the program is that it focuses on the most important words that are in almost all of the text that your students are going to have the opportunities to read in their careers in school. So instead of working on those outlier words that aren't as important, we're really targeting and getting the most bang for our buck on words that students need to understand meaning. These words are taught in context and not isolation, in a thematic approach. And students will have repeated exposure so that they can have deeper comprehension. This just shows the scope and sequence of the different learning objectives that students will be engaging in throughout their time in Word. And then I wanted to share a little bit about the program flow. So when students begin Word, they start with a little placement activity. It typically begins with a question and then 4 pictures that they'll answer a question about. So it's very visual. Based on those answers, the program gives students a passage that is at an appropriate level based on their understanding of the words previously asked about. Once they complete reading one passage, they'll go through an activity called the mega cluster activity, where they get a chance to sort words into different categories. After that, they get an opportunity to go through 5 different vocabulary activities or games, and I'll show you what that will look like on their side of things if you haven't already seen it. Now, this is the important part, and we get a lot of questions here. So often families will say, and students will say, but I read my story, I already went through the 5 games, and now I'm having to start all over. Well, really, our students aren't starting all over. Remember how we said that students have the opportunity to practice words in context? There are 2 passages, a fiction passage and a nonfiction passage. So students will start with one, complete the activities in that first cycle, and then repeat the activities using the second passage. So if they start with fiction, the second time around, they'll go to the nonfiction passage. Anytime students are participating in Word, for the final 5 minutes of every 15-minute session, students will have free choice. These are those 5 activities, and it kind of shares or shows you a little bit more about which games are covering the different skills and strategies. Some of the skills and strategies only take place in second grade and up. So if you have a kindergartner or a first grader, they may only have 3 doors in their little Word clubhouse. All right, again, we're going to zoom past that video. That'll save a little more time for some interaction and some questions and modeling in a moment. So before we move on, though, a couple of other things to think about with Word and literacy, or Word and FIRST. Those 2 are more of a game-like approach. Somebody asked, which app do I go to for just the books? So that's where we're shifting into right now. So right now, we're going to take a look at Literacy Pro. So there are over 2,000 ebooks that your students will have the opportunity to read. There are optional assessments. At this point, because we're using this as an independent reading opportunity at home, some of the features that you might bump into are not necessarily those that teachers are requiring at this time. In the typical school year, though, teachers may engage in some of the other features in a different way. What I really want to focus on here is the power of choice. There are a multitude of texts that are available for students, and the way that they're able to find them are based on their interest levels. This is an example of what one of your students might see when they open their Literacy Pro. The first time they log in, if they haven't already done so, they'll go through a few questions to talk about what their favorite things are about reading. After they've answered those questions, it's almost like the Netflix of books. They'll have little shelves that suggest and recommend books that would be just right for them. They'll also have a chance to explore and find more books. They'll be able to check the plus sign and turn that into a check mark and add it to a My Books shelf and search for specific books. When your child opens one of the books specifically, let's talk for a minute about what some of the pieces are that they might see. So like I said, that little plus sign, when students select this, the plus sign will change into a check mark, and that will put that title onto their bookshelf. At the bottom, you'll notice that there is an orange bar. Right now, while we're reading at home, that's going to be a very important part because that indicates that this is a book that is an ebook. Students will be able to open and read that book from cover to cover on their device. Some books that are in the Literacy Pro database are listed, but they are not ebooks. If it doesn't have that orange bar, then it's not going to be an ebook. There are going to be other times when teachers might be using some of those other features and other texts. Now, on the right-hand side, you'll see a little light bulb. That indicates that this book has a little Think More. That's a check-in. It also has a speaker. That lets you know that this book is an ebook with audio. Some of our ebooks have a read aloud feature, which is especially helpful to some of our beginning readers. And then at the bottom, and we'll talk just a little bit about, if you notice that little check mark, that just indicates that this is in a My level. Some teachers may be enabling that feature. So if you see that, I'll show you a little bit more about what that means in a moment. Now, when I go live into some of the programs, I'll actually interact with this, some of these features as a student would. But I just want to point out at the very top, when students are searching, you'll want to make sure that they are toggling onto ebooks only. Students can click this over and it will make the search through all of the books in the database, and it may pull up some that are not ebooks. All right. So before I go live, I do also want to share a couple of resources that we've shared with the district, and teachers may have already shared some of these with you. With Literacy Pro, there's a little scavenger hunt that will be shared or has been shared that might help you go through some of the steps and work through some of the features with your child in a game-like way. And of course, we've also shared a little bit of an overview of all three of the learning tools. So before we jump into our overview of questions and answers, I want to go in and I'm going to log in as a student. Now, your students don't have to do this because they're logging in through Clever. Now I'm logging in as Dax. And since we just talked about Literacy Pro and many of the questions that came in early were related to Literacy Pro, I'm going to start there. So your kiddos are going to launch right in. And when they log in, this is the screen that they will see. They can click on their profile, the search feature, My Books, and Explore. Right now, you can see it's orange around Explore. It's letting me know that the last book that I was reading was My Cat Muffin, and I can jump right back in to where I left off. So I'm going to do that right now. Now, I had already read this book, but I was in the middle of a Think More when I stopped. I wanted to point out that you can go back to your Think More if you weren't finished with it before and pick up where you left off. So I need to go. This also is a cool feature if your students are engaging in a Think More, which is an optional activity. But students can go right out of the Think More, back into the text, and flip back and forth to find an answer or check back in if they needed to. So look backs are allowed in this. If I wanted to go back and reread anything, I can do that as well. I'm going to close out of that book for right now. Now, if I had finished reading that book, I might go into the log time. Some people had asked, how do you mark that you finished the book? When you log your time, this purple bar will pop up and you can click, I finished the book. That's where your students can rate the book if they want to and give opinions. They might say, oh, I left this book, couldn't put it down. It was awesome. They can type their own and then move on. Now, one of the other questions people asked a lot are about how do you get a book that's at the just right level? So let me tell you about Dax. Dax is a second grader, but his reading is probably closer to that of a kindergarten, first grade student. So he's a little bit behind, and some of the books that are on the bookshelf seem a little bit hard. So Dax wants to search for some books. Dax is also the name of my new puppy. So let's say that Dax wants to read about dogs. And he goes into the search feature and clicks dogs. Now, there are 302 results that popped up for dogs. That's a lot of books to search through. It also, I want to make sure that it's on ebooks only, which it is, because look what happens. When I go to ebooks and paper books, it's going to show even more. Now we're on the ebooks only, and that's where it's 60 results for dogs. Now, Dax's teacher has put in what his guided reading level would be, and that's going to help the program filter and show him some books. So if this My Level button pops up, Dax could click that, and it would narrow the field a little bit. You can also sort the books on the right-hand side. You can sort them from lowest to highest. You can sort which books have audio, because Dax could go with a little bit more challenging book if it had audio support. Another area that I think a lot of people miss out on is this little filter button right here. Here's where Dax knows, or his parents know, that he probably in this A, B, C, D zone are some of the simplest books. So if he clicks on a few of those and then scrolls down, now we've gone from a larger number to only 4 books. So I can click on some of those books that are a little more appropriate for Dax. If I want to sort through genre, I can change that from fiction to nonfiction, or how long the book is. So these are just some other ways that your students can filter through and find the books that are just right for them. Now, let's say none of those books seemed like just the right ones. So Dax is going to go back in. Hang on, I didn't unclick one of them. There we go. And we did sort it from low to high. This one looks really interesting to Dax, and he notices that there's an audio feature. He wants to save that book so that he doesn't have to hunt for it again later. This is where anytime your child clicks the plus sign and turns it to a check mark, it automatically puts that book into their My Books bookshelf. So watch when I click on the My Books bookshelf. You'll notice that before I only had My Cat Muffin and Old Mo, and now I've got the dog's book. When students click the Explore feature, that's going to be more like that Netflix search, and it's going to show a wide range of texts that are on different topics. So I am going to come out of my sharing for right now, because those were the big show and tell pieces I wanted to make sure that I shared. But we can jump into questions and answers. I wanted to make sure we have plenty of time for that, or any pieces that maybe we didn't cover as we went through earlier. I know that was a lot of information all at once.
All right, we'll take some questions from the chat that have come in. That the first question, can these programs be used after school hours? So the program, we have moved it from implementation of September to implementation now. So the programs will be on, they'll stay on, they'll be available over the summer, and then be available next year as well. With word sorting on Word, it's not very intuitive for a working from home parent to understand what the different categories mean. Can we get a description of what each bucket means, i.e. a definition of things in nature, how it is, etc.?
And that was for Word, Mike? I'm sorry, I was just catching up.
Yes, that was for Word.
Okay. So there are 10 themes that your child will see when they open that up. But the first one, there will only be one that they can progress through. So students are typically going to begin with the Amazing Animals theme, and then they're going to go through some of those introductory pieces to read a passage and connect some words, and sort and cluster some of the vocabulary words that they will be then practicing in those 5 different games. So as students engage in these, and there are some practice features as they jump into them to begin with, if they're going into the Ha-Ha shop, there's usually an example so that they can see what is it that I'm actually supposed to be doing when I play this part of the game, so that I know, oh, this is when I'm practicing and playing around with words that have multiple meanings. The same thing happens in other games where students are interacting with synonyms and antonyms or compound words. So hopefully that helps. A lot of this, and we have to think about the fact that our kids are right now, they're learning new content as they're engaging in the games, but they're also learning how to play them. So typically in that first theme or that first round of activities, students may bump into a few hurdles or challenges because they're trying this out for the very first time. But it is designed to be very engaging and student-friendly and game-like. So really just jumping on and playing and interacting. As they move through, they'll begin to understand and unlock the different activities.
Eleanor, Jennifer asked, do these apps work independently of one another, or are they integrated and take information from one another to build on the experience?
That's a really cool question. They do operate in isolation. They do not connect with one another. So if you're working on First, it's not going to influence what kinds of words you're given in Word. So those two are kind of on their own private islands. Next school year, there'll be a few things that teachers are going to infuse, and they may adjust in Word, especially the order of themes. Perhaps if they know we're getting ready to study space, they may choose to have kids practice those particular themes prior to doing that or at the same time.
Question comes in from Libby. Are there a limit on how many books can go on their bookshelf?
All right, Trisha, I'm going to jump onto you for this one. I don't think there is a limit for how many that they can add.
I don't believe there is.
Okay. I will say that if there are so many books, and I'm going to give you a mom example because my kiddo is learning at home too, just like everybody else is, and he's practicing with Literacy Pro. He found, I think, the Teacher from the Black Lagoon series, and he added every single one of them to his bookshelf. And then he had a little bit of a hard time finding the book he was looking for. So in doing that, he realized maybe I don't need to add every book that I see to my bookshelf. I can go back and search. But again, I don't think that there is a limit.
Question from Danielle. Are the teachers able to see the work the kids are doing on their end?
There's a ton of behind the scenes information that's happening, and teachers just this week are really getting a chance to dig in and find out more about that. As your children are engaging in the activities, there is real-time data that's being gathered so that teachers can log in and not just see who's playing and for how long, but where they may be having some gaps in their learning. Where might they need to have a little extra support? So we're actually working with your teachers this week to help them understand that a little bit more, and they'll be developing that knowledge as they move forward.
Question from Jamie. On Literacy Pro, my son's book turned into another book.
Okay. That's a new one for me. So I think that would be one you would want to make sure that you communicate. If that sounds like there might have been a glitch in the system here, I'm not sure about that.
I'm not sure either, but if you want to give us the book's name or any information, we can certainly look into that.
Definitely. And if you can share that in the chat, or you can share it in an email, but any strange little things like that might come up, make sure that you share that with us so we can look into that particular child's information.
So we talked a little bit about the teachers are able, and they're learning this week to dive into the reports a little bit. Remember, this was designed for teachers to be able to utilize in the classroom. So we're using for a little different purpose, exclusively 100% at home right now. But parents are asking great questions. And one of them is there a way for parents to monitor how their children are doing?
So again, these, especially when we think about FIRST and Word, those are designed in a typical world where we're not at home learning, for students to engage in independently while their teachers are working with other small groups. So this is designed not to have a ton of need of support outside of that independent zone. But I know as a mom, I'm wanting to know, what are you doing over there on that device? And are you understanding what you're doing? So there is not a way for you to look into your child's features and see like, how are they doing? But you can see that they're moving along the trajectory. Teachers are going to be sharing a lot more with families as we move forward. So I think most of what your students are going to be doing is just progressing through that learning path as they engage in activities. And sometimes they're going to repeat some of the activities, and that doesn't mean they're doing a bad job. It just means that we know that with practice, we improve. So the first time perhaps an activity is introduced or content is introduced, students are learning it. Then they have an opportunity to practice it, and then it may be measured. So as your students are working through, you may notice some of that. That doesn't mean they're doing poorly. It just means that they have to practice a number of times before that data can get collected and they can move on to the next piece. In Literacy Pro, you can see a little bit more of your students' progress. You can see how much time they've spent reading. You can see what books they've been clicking on. So that's the part that you as a parent can have a little bit more hands-on.
Oh, and our question for Mary Beth, my level isn't available on my screen. Does that mean the child's level hasn't been selected?
What it means, and teachers are just learning about some of these features this week. Some teachers have gone in and have assigned particular reading levels for students. Some teachers are opening up bands of grade level. So if that feature is not there, but you're trying to search for a particular level of text, I would recommend that you go in and either search for a certain topic and then sort from low to high, or go into that little filter feature in that orange tab that I showed, and then you can click on specific levels. And I know we're all learning new levels. You may be more familiar with the leveling system that has been used this year and in past in the district. But if you think of it as starting at A is at the very beginning and going all the way to Z is the top. On the screen when I was showing, you would also notice that Dax didn't have that last part of the alphabet available, and that's because he's a second grader, and the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade libraries weren't available and open to him. So that gives you a little bit of wiggle room and play for finding books that might be at the right level.
Question, how much is the district monitoring this for progress to the next grade? our focus has been to provide the tools for our students. It's not about monitoring per se. I mean, we are learning the back end of it, and we are able to see what kids are participating. But for the long run, we're able to find gaps in student learning. Now, if they were in front of us, we would be instructing based on those gaps throughout the day. Certainly, teachers may pull a group or do something on one of the days that they're connecting with their classroom, but the focus has not been on monitoring for decision making for progress to the next grade. We want our kids engaged. We want them to participate. We've been trying to set up a routine as much as possible. We know that parents are working from home. We know that parents are first responders. We are certainly trying to be as flexible as possible and understand the everybody's in a different situation. So my advice to everyone is to do what you can. Try to make it a fun experience for our kids. We try to, part of our decision making in moving this implementation forward is for some of the tools that came with Scholastic Literacy is to provide students with a program that they can do independently. With certainly parents, the part of it is encouragement and setting up a location for them to work. But we love to hear from your experiences, and certainly are here to support you. Jamie, I know you're having some difficulty, so we're going to Ron, if you wouldn't mind, would you reach out to Jamie? I know you're still on the line right now,
Sure.
just to see if we can narrow that problem down so she can get an answer before we end the session. Not that we're ending right now. Can students only look at ebooks? Lorenzo wants Captain Underpants. What can you do?
So you can read any book. You can also log any book. And I can jump in real quick and show, because we did have that other question pop in earlier before our session. I did not cover that. So let me jump back into Dax and back to his profile. And he's wanting to log a book that he didn't see. So in his reading log, let's say that he wanted to add he has a Captain Underpants book. But it's not pulling up. So what he can do, if he has that book, since it wasn't in the search, all right, let me go back to, hang on. Yikes. Add to log. Now I'm not being able to do it. Trisha, am I going into the wrong place to do this part? Maybe it's in the search.
Yeah, I think, Eleanor, what this question was is you can go in and search for Captain Underpants. And
Okay.
so if you search for a book, what you may find is that we have that book listed, but it's not an ebook in the program. So if you want to remind them where the toggle is to switch on to ebooks only and remind them which books are ebooks, that would be helpful.
And I think we're moving slower than I am. So hang on one second. Captain. So when they search, there we go. So you'll see, oh no, there's nothing there. There's one that's already filtered in, but it's not an ebook. Now, if you have a book at home and you're wanting to add that, Trisha, can you remind me is it through the profile that they can add a book?
Yep, they can click on their profile and they'll see their reading log, and you scroll up. And then here's where one of the things I always encourage parents to ask their students to do is to see their reading profile. And this is where in Literacy Pro, you're able to see what your kids have been doing. And then you can see if they've read a paperback book or any book at home and they want to include that in their reading log. Eleanor's just about to show you how to add that book.
Okay. Now, if there's, let me do this one because I know somebody asked about Harry Potter. Now, the book did not show up. This is where you can add the book if it's not already in the database. You can give it a cover. I think Harry Potter needs a dragon on the cover. You can add the author. You can, a student, if they have that actual book at home, they can read that book and still put that information. Let's say Dax read the beginning of his Harry Potter book for 30 minutes and he can save it. Now that's going to come back into his reading log and he can go back in now and add to that log again the next time. So that's just another feature that I think a couple people had questions on.
Another question, Eleanor, that came in is, in Word, how can a student tell what they still need to complete before moving to the next module? My son's teacher shared a screenshot to show he was 96% completed, but we couldn't tell what he still needed to complete. The check marks on the door disappear from session to session.
All right, now Trisha, I may need your help on this one a little bit too. So just to remember, make sure that your students have read both of the fiction and the nonfiction passages because it's going to cycle through that process 2 times. Trisha, can you add anything else there to help them?
There is one unique feature of Word that makes it pretty engaging for kids, and as kids use the program more, they become quite familiar with the learning flow and how the activities flow from one to the other. But one of the things that we've built into the program is sort of a reward period, and we call it free play, or where kids actually, after 15 minutes of play in the activities, will get the opportunity to go anywhere they want in the program in terms of things that they've already done. So when they go here, and Eleanor, do you have the screen of the screenshot of the book, the activities and the doors?
Yeah, hang on, I'll pull that right up.
Yeah. So when they're in this free period, and part of it is they can do a number of different activities, but one of the things that I love educationally that they can do is they can go back and redo any of the activities they've done so far. So in this free play, which it only lasts for approximately 7 minutes, they can go and reopen any of the doors that they've opened before. So it's in that period that a student might see that some of the doors are not available. So because they haven't yet done that activity. So I love it. Educationally, just multiple opportunities and an opportunity for students to choose to redo or replay activities to consolidate their learning, I think is very powerful. So that might be what's going on. So I hope that helps.
Question from Libby. In Literacy Pro, she noticed that the text gets covered by the navigation arrows, and it's very hard to read the text. She talks about the zoom in feature. Sometimes it's cumbersome to scroll around the screen and misses the page because it's zoomed in and forgets to scroll over before hitting the navigation arrow. Any tips to help?
Well, I think that's good. I think that's some good feedback that we want to make sure that we communicate back to the powers that be. I also have noticed that depending on the device, sometimes it's easier to see text on one device versus another. So that may be what's happening there. Also, we're working with a kindergartner here, so we're probably not in a chapter book that we need to zoom into terribly much. But there should be that ability to adjust that screen size some. Thank you, Libby. You just shared some very important information, and maybe Ron can also pull this information in. iPad Mini for reference there. So it could be that the capabilities may be adjusted some. So I know that's not the most perfect answer in the universe, but I think that, you know, some of it is also as students play and interact with it, they're going to become a little bit more proficient with how to use some of those features to enlarge or shrink.
Eleanor, it's Lynn. I noticed that next to the zoom in and zoom out buttons, there's like, it looks like an X that will bring it back to its normal screen. I know that the best way, you know, they have to keep doing that if you're a kindergartner, but I know that I was showing kids how to do that to bring it back.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other questions? We're gonna open it up. You don't have to type it in. If you just want to come off mute and ask a question, we have a few more minutes. Again, our purpose tonight is just to give you a brief overview, answer questions that have come in, answer your questions, help you support your children at home while they're having this experience, and being able to provide them with some literacy skills to move forward. Hopefully we're back in school sooner rather than later. I'm going to open it up to our coaches. Are there any common questions that we have not asked tonight that you might want to share, a question and an answer that you've received from parents? I know you've joined many sessions from our classroom teachers. Any tips, any advice before the parents, before we close out this evening? I put them on the spot.
Well, I think we have received a lot of questions from parents about completion of the activities. And so I think that it's been pretty clear. I think Eleanor did a nice job tonight explaining that there are times when the program is adapting and learning from your student, and it is progressing based on response time and responses, and it gathers data. So sometimes your child may feel like they are repeating an activity, but it might be they might be being offered a few different distractor type questions to see what their response time is, because there are phases to the learning process as you go through. So maybe just encouraging your kids, just be patient, just keep trying to go with the flow of the program until it starts to learn where you are. That seems to be one of the most popular questions we've had.
Super, thanks for sharing. Sandy, Lynn, anything else to add?
No, but there was one more question
And I'm just,
about the maybe they could touch on that, about the categories for the word.
yes, I was wondering if Trisha was still on. I think that the question is more about the mega cluster activities. Questions about the categories in Word. So I think that we've got parents that are wondering a little bit more information on that. And I know that's a very different type of activity that some students may never have interacted with in a classroom. Can you expand on that a little bit for us, and also help us with the stars on the doors? And can we do we have to have all the stars on the doors before we move on? So those two keep popping.
Yeah. So one of the activities they do is called a mega sort activity, and that's what I believe the question is referring to as well. And so the mega sort activity is challenging for a lot of students, and it takes them a little bit of time to understand it. I too have used the game and done it, and it takes quite a while to it takes a little while to understand how we're asking kids to categorize words. Because one of the big underlying themes in the Word program is that words have different meanings in different contexts. So when we expose kids to words in context, for example, when they've read the passage or the story, and then following that, they do an activity like the Megasort, we're asking them to revisit that story and consider the words that they've read. And there really are categorizing them in ways semantically, so the ways that words connect to each other. So I hope that starts to answer the question. Maybe Eleanor, you can expand a little bit if anything pops into your mind.
Right. Well,
Yeah, I think it's a challenging one that kids get.
Yeah, that one is challenging. That one is challenging as students are beginning to engage. I even had to play it a little bit myself to just make sense of it. And it really is thinking about, in the context of that passage, what exactly was that word talking about? Was it, and it will give options for where that word may need to fit. So, and students are always given auditory and visual feedback as they're playing the games to help them understand if they are on the right track or if they need to think differently about an answer. And then I think the stars are the next question.
So we know for some students, they get motivated by stars or badges. So when they do the activities, they are rewarded with stars. It's anywhere from 1 to 3 stars, and they don't have to get all stars to progress in the program. The word program will automatically take them to the next activity. It does give them multiple opportunities for free play, which I spoke to earlier, which some students will choose to replay that activity, and they might try to get all 3 stars the next time. So they have the opportunity to revisit, to get more stars if that's important to them, but the program will continue to progress on and take them through the program. And what's happening behind the scenes too, we talked about this a little bit, is that the teachers have quite a robust teacher report that they can see what kids are doing. So over time, as they get adapt and kids use the programs enough, they're really going to understand where their strengths are or where they need maybe a little bit of support. And they will, if we were in a classroom setting, they'd probably address that right in the classroom. And here we're just challenged a little bit more. And you guys as parents are doing a lot to support your children at home. So.
The last question that came in, how do we, the parents, explain the categories to our students?
Yeah, well, that was the mega sort question, Mike. So
okay.
Within that activity, we're asking kids to categorize words. And the categories change depending on the reading passage they've read. But again, it's a little bit of a challenging activity, which your pilot teachers, when they used this in the fall, said they quite liked that it was challenging. And they will have multiple opportunities to do these activities, and we'll see that they'll become more adept at or understanding how the games function, and likely the performance or how they do in them will improve.
So we're at a little disadvantage now. I mean, we're not able to introduce these programs to students in the school. We certainly recognize that, and but still believe that this was the best option that we had to be able to help our students move forward in light of not being in school. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I really appreciate. It's the first time we've done this. Patrick, you want to make any comments? Patrick Finelli's our coordinator of public relations, so he helped put this evening together.
I just wanted to thank everybody for participating with the.
All right, Patrick's jumping in and out, but I left my email address. I am happy to direct you to the correct person to talk to if I can't help you. We appreciate you being here, and thank you for participating in our first Scholastic parent Q&A. Thank you, and good night.